second budget hearing today on May 22. May I get an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes, folks. When we have the minutes. Does anyone have any of the corrections or additions for the May 16, 2024 or the March 13, 2025 meeting?
On the March 13th, 2025, at the motion, at the beginning of it on page 1. The motion to approve the agenda, I think that's supposed to be me motioning. Has my name, just says Mr. Lynn, Angela Strander. And then the vote that has, Councilor Furr's name, misspelled as well. Well done. But it wasn't spelled, it was spelled correctly the rest of it.
Any other questions or additions? Yes.
Yes, in the May 16th. Minutes, this is in the last paragraph motion case with for approval of budget.
Read what page, please?
Page 9 of
Thank you.
So, it says, Rainey stated that, strike the words voting no. Insert the words his CFA charter. And then the reads would make it inappropriate to sign the order as vice chairman of the committee, insert, it says, I believe the estimates to that.
Is that what you said, or is that what you want to say?
Exactly what I said.
Okay. Chairman.
This to me was an ethical issue for the oath that I take as a CFA charter holder. I can't, I have a duty to truth in financial matters that I am professionally involved
Your opinion.
in. Yes.
Okay, never mind.
Well,
Yeah, I'm not.
Move to approve the minutes of the May 16 and May 16, 2024 and March 13, 2025. The budget committee meeting as amended.
I'll second.
Second. All in favor? Okay. And now we go to public comment. Is there anyone that would like to make public comment?
Randy's by his family. Bye.
Okay, I want to come over here. Thank you.
Randy Neal, PO Box 1092. I sent you all some materials. I want to talk about contingency. You know, we have a pretty long track record of contingency now of, you know, the highest we've ever used is maybe $600,000 a year. It's been growing from $500,000 to $1 million, 2 million, 3 million, it's back to 2 million this year. It's not likely we have any real needs beyond the 600, so my advice is to set it at 750 or $1 million, something that's still conservative. You know, there's still revenues that is, that's what the contingency was being used for, is to so that there's excess revenues. Well, instead of spreading them out throughout all kinds of funds, take that excess that you think is going, you know, has a good chance of happening, and put it into places that you really want to show the city or show the citizens that you're investing in, whether it's housing or the CDE kind of equivalents. But it's, you know, we're expecting some amount of excess funds, letting them all sprinkle into all kinds of different funds and show up at the end of the year is just another lump that's showing up in this vast amount of cash. We should really point it at the things where we would want to invest in. The second comment is around reserves and surpluses and then balances. And I'll agree that 5 million back in the day wasn't enough. And letting, over estimating on expenses and underestimating on revenues allowed all that to build up. But we're beyond that point now. I mean, it's easy to see that we've got more in cash balances than we spend in a year. And most businesses wouldn't kind of operate that way. They reinvest back into the things that they need to, new features, new facilities, new product lines, whatever. And we need to do that. We need to show the community that we're investing in a wide variety of things. There are 4 reasons to have these types of reserves and surpluses. One is to fund deferred maintenance and replacements. We heard Karen's and others, there's a new vehicle that's needed this year. It's obvious that these things happen. Well, it's also obvious that a new roof is needed on the Beach Academy every X amount of years. And some amount of repairs need to be done to Prolavana Hall, and it'll be the same with the food pantry. And it's always happens with the RV park, except instead of having a reserve for all the things that are going to happen at the RV park, let's say, it seems what happens is we put in this year's worth of maintenance into the budget, and we show maybe next year's activities as the reserve, but it's more than just next year's, it's every 30 years, the roof needs to be replaced, every X amount of years, the pool needs to be replaced, paving needs to be done, and our reserves should reflect those types of things. That's what an HOA would do, that's what a condo would do. We should put that kind of logic into what we do as well. The second category is accumulating funds to undertake new capital, new project needs. Well, we've got the housing fund, it's accumulating some funds, maybe it's not fast enough. But it's things that we want to invest in, and our reserves should show those types of projects. And in my suggestion is there's other things besides just the housing that we should be investing some amount of money into, whether it's a future Southwind master plan, et cetera, actions towards the Southwind master plan, et cetera. The buffer for seasonality and working capital, there's a pretty minor amounts, and a lot of the funds, that's all they really need is, like the building fund, just it's going to spend linearly throughout the year. But revenues are going to come in and out, so they need the cash to keep operating, and that's a pretty minimal amount. It's 2-3 months worth of buffer. And then the last one is business interruption coverage. If we're a business, we'd have to buy insurance, and then you have to pay for insurance, so you have to decide how much insurance do you want to buy. And business interruption insurance is basically when all hell breaks loose, how much money do I want to get me until I can replan? Because we know if the fire happens in my business, I'll lose my revenues, but at the same time, I'll furlough as many people as I possibly can. I'll cut expenses, I'll cut projects. So what's really needed usually isn't as much as you think it is. But, that's what we need to make sure we understand what are in these reserves and surpluses. My last one is, the shuttle is in the budget again. This is like 5 years in a row. It's probably not gonna happen. I would take it out, but I would put some piece back in. Because what we heard in the transportation strategic plan was, it's a good idea, but it wasn't really working. It sort of has the wrong schedule. And it really wasn't an experience that drove people to ride that bus. So, pick a few $1,000s, figure out how to make it an experience tourists want to use, and get prepared to be able to execute it with or without Sunset Empire next year.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Okay. Are you feeling? No, it's perfect. You're on good terms with you.
Okay. So last we left our heroes. So I sent this out to you, the other day. And so what changes that we've made that you've agreed to so far, right? Are, the transfers in, that will be a transfer from county TRT into the general fund for $50,000. And that's to cover the increase in the age wrap. You'll see there's a $35,000 reduction and a $300,000 reduction on the ending fund balance numbers. The 300,000 is transfer out, that goes into the affordable housing fund. And that will, the council at some point in time will determine what we want from Elk Creek to be able to utilize that or some form of that fund. And then
They were from the.
no fire.
I don't remember agreeing to that we agreed, and we talked about it, but I don't know that we agreed to the 300,000 going into the affordable housing.
I apologize, I thought I heard that.
That was consensus.
Yeah, I thought so.
We don't actually vote on any particular item until we vote on the entire thing. But
I thought they needed more discussion, we haven't hit the.
We haven't hit the discussion part, so we have more discussion to talk about. If you guys want to, again, this doesn't have to be approved until you actually approve, right? The 35,000 was an increase in the community programs from 140 to 175. And then the HRAP is, we added 50,000 in total, which ends up being about 35,000 actually in salaries and then the associated benefits. So those are, and can we go down one more little bit, okay? County care, please, and then, yep, those are the other funds. So that's where we kind of left. We have more time at the end for discussion. But in the meantime, we'll kick off and what we have left before we get to the other funds for the building fund and the affordable housing fund with community development. So, I'll let Steve kick it off and then we'll go from there.
All right, thank you. Look, I can see a whole heck of a lot of difference in terms of the 2025 or the 25 compared to.
It's the page number.
Page 50, page and 51, yeah. Sorry, page 50, sorry. So I think, the biggest things that you would notice would be, in the building fund expenditures, so this is on page 51. And it would be salaries and wages. And previously it was 126,000, we're proposing 164, approximately 1,000. And the reason being is that there was some discussion with Bruce, Tim and I in terms of trying to utilize the fund a little bit more. So we put a little bit of code enforcement in there and a little bit more of Tessa's administrative salary because she does quite a bit of stuff with building inspection. So instead of that all coming, from police and the planning departments, we figured this was a good spot to utilize some of the building funds. So that's why you see that increase. So again, that's with Daniel Contier, code enforcement and test fund as far as administration.
So, okay, I'm sorry, let me just understand this. So that increase represents a transfer of the code enforcement costs into the building fund.
A portion.
A portion of it,
One half of.
okay,
Okay,
and, and the administrator or the
right.
planning commission.
So the fund will roughly add 1.7 FTE now.
Okay. This may be jumping ahead, but isn't it true that, the fees for building permits can also fund code enforcement?
And
That's essentially what this is doing.
right,
So the fees from in the building fund, you do the permitting, it goes into this fund, and we can use those for code enforcement.
Oh, okay, so you're
Yeah.
transferring from the building fund into here?
Well, so this is the building fund, so what I'm doing, I'm splitting Daniel, half general fund and police and half code enforcement. Or, I'm sorry, half building fund enforcement, so that's how he's being paid, I'm being charged that.
But what I'm asking is, so the money for fees and the fees, et cetera, for building permits,
Yes,
that's what's funding.
that's what funds this, yes, that's correct.
That's, okay, thanks.
So we had a discussion earlier in the year the council did, and I don't know where the results of that are, but we were looking, trying to reduce this fund. Based on the pro forma, as you did, Tim, we're gonna go into this instead of with 600,000, we're gonna go in with 900,000. Even if we spend all the money that we have budgeted for this, we're still left with the 746,000 ending fund balance because of that, the higher beginning fund balance. Has the city council made any decision about, or talked about anything to do to reduce this fund? Because we can't spend it legally on anything, but a building official fund can only be spent on inspecting building projects.
And code
And
enforcement.
code enforcement.
I don't, the letter that Tim got from the state didn't say that. So I think we might be stretching it, we might be able to get away with it. But we're still gonna have this huge balance that's locked into this account. Has the council been able to come up with any solution, reducing fees, doing anything to try to kind of resolve that issue?
So at this time, the council has not taken that up. However, on a go-forward basis, the council can decide to change the fee structure at a later point in time, if they would like to. So what they council could is talk to instruct Bruce to look at that, and then we would work as staff to bring back a form of proposal on a go-forward basis.
What we could, and we did kind of discuss that. That we could do a fee holiday. Because we've got all of these funds available that's going to roll for a few years to pay these salaries, even with an additional. Half an FTE or a whole one, if that's what Daniel and Tessa brings to the table.
But we made no decision.
We didn't make a decision, but we did talk.
Yeah, we had a conversation.
We talked about it,
Yeah.
and whether or not we're interested in subsidizing, people who are building second homes here, for the most part.
Right.
Whether we want to
Why don't you say
subsidize them by.
subsidizing building second homes? That just seems so disrespectful
It's not
to
disrespectful.
people investing in our community. Is that what you view all investment in our community to be?
No, I don't.
Then it is, then why did you say that?
Because the majority of the homes that are built here are sex homes, right?
Go stay.
And and they're usually built by, you have to have a certain amount of money to build here now. So why do we want to subsidize those rather than finding other ways to spend the money, which I think we can, that would actually benefit the whole community?
I think it would be more beneficial, and I have to agree with Tim, that I think it's disparaging to second homeowners to indicate that, were you a second homeowner at one point here, maybe? So I
Just
think
till we
that,
sold our house.
Excuse me,
right,
that subject really is
But we-
for another meeting, this is for a
Right.
council meeting.
but we,
Right.
and I'm sorry, but if I can just finish really quickly, and I'm sorry that I did get off path there, but, I think it is definitely something that we need to talk about how we're going to move forward sooner than later. Because we do have a huge balance and we need to figure out a way to get money to the affordable housing fund. We can't use it. Because of the excise tax, right? We can't just move it over because of the excise tax.
Right.
So, but is what we could do is possibly, and I know this isn't, you're not a big fan of this, but, we could do something retroactive. To where we could get the 200,000 back and get other fees back that had been paid in, get that into the general fund, and then move that from the general fund over to, the affordable housing fund.
Okay,
Yeah.
So,
let's move on to.
Yeah. So technically, it would be very difficult to. As Richard points out, stretching, that would be a stretch, because particularly like the fees, the reason that fund balance is even higher now is because the fees the city paid. Right, those came from bond funds, so they would not be able to go back to the general fund. So that would be, that we really gonna do that. So again, I am not a huge fan, but again, council can make any decision they want. I'm not a huge fan of the reimbursing or refunding if the council decides that this fund is too big or from a policy perspective, then I think what we need to do is go back, take a look and right size current fee structure on a go forward basis. That would be my recommendation, but again, council can decide whatever.
I have to agree, I think it's not part of the budget, but I think it's part of something the council has to give direction on. Because this fund is gonna continue to grow. I mean, when you look at the amount of money we have in it and what we spend, it's gonna continue to grow. We're probably gonna build a school, probably gonna do something, he's gonna put more permit fees into this thing. So the council needs to come up with a solution.
And we
And
will do
I
that.
think that's valid subject and matter, but it's gonna take lots and lots of discussion. You're gonna have to find out what you can do and what you can't do, and we don't have that information today, so, yeah.
And if our building inspector was to, for example, retire, because he's tried to retire several times, he might have to end up bringing another building inspector in from Portland. You know, so we don't know what our expenses will be for a building inspector in the near future. And the building inspector is really important.
Let's move on.
Continue. All right, sounds good. So the only other, and it's a legitimate discussion that you're all having. And we're, like Tim said, I'm sure Bruce, Tim and I would be willing to discuss all those things and see what we can do. The only other item to point out is at kind of near the bottom of the page, it looks like it's fund number 63012. It says vehicle purchase and it shows $50,000. We are taking a look at purchasing another vehicle for the building inspector. Currently, he has a 2017 Ford Escape. It has about 34,000 miles on it. It's the old city manager vehicle. I think how it comes into play, really is with, the planning department has a 2006 Ford Explorer. 188,000 or 138,000 miles on it. Took it to Les Schwab because the brakes and everything are like Brad Flintstone brakes. And so the hope was to be able to purchase a new vehicle and then have the ability to transfer the existing ones in the planning department. So that is probably the big expense that we wanted to share with everybody. And other than that, I'm here for any questions.
Would there be a difference in like long-term budget for the city to recoup costs if the general fund or another budget paid for a new vehicle and then leased it to the building fund? As opposed to the building fund purchasing the vehicle in the first place?
I'm not 100% sure what the advantage would be.
But I'm not sure about if that would reimburse back into the general fund, be able to use more money out of the. It's not gonna be a substantial amount, but.
Yeah, but I'd have general fund outflow first, so.
And then reimbursement back.
Yeah, so I guess it's zero sum game.
I was just.
Yeah.
On the contingency is consistently 10%.
This one, I'm sorry.
Consistently 10% for the budget, and that's a budget balancing, right?
Really, no, your budget balancing is actually your new fund balance number. What we'll try to do is keep 10%, so however your budget is gonna balance is because of the ending fund.
So,
That's kind of how it does it.
so we've got 10% throughout the whole budget, every category, 10%.
Everything, yes, that's right.
So that means we've got this big contingency. Do we really need a 10% contingency here? I mean, that's what comes back, I guess, to, do we need to spend, this is a general question for the budget.
Sure.
Do we need to spend more money within the budget to bring this contingency down, to still be able to balance the budget out?
So it's the benefit of contingency and where we differ from businesses, right, is essentially what the budget committee is gonna do here is give me, or give us the legal authority to actually spend funds, right? So when you adopt or approve the budget, that, and then when the council adopts, it, that gives us the legal authority, or appropriating funds gives us legal authority up to those dollars to be able to spend it. Okay, if that money goes into the ending fund balance, and that's what we adopt with the ending fund balance, I can't use that at all during the year. So I cannot use that ending fund balance until the following year legally, outside of, governor giving us the authority to spend. So what you do, is you put contingency in there from a budgetary basis, so as we go through the year, if something does happen, or we come upon some opportunities, then we come to the council and the council moves the contingency. It has to be moved by council, we can't just spend it, right? So the reason you have it is just in case. If I said we had zero contingency, then that would mean right now your ending fund balances would all go up by that 10% amount. And so when you're looking at what your actual ending fund balance or emergency funds are, it's really a combination of your contingency and your ending fund balance. That's kind of what it is. So yes, from a spending perspective, if your fund balances are getting too high, you say, well, we need to allocate, we need to, spend those funds or, appropriate them in some form. So that's kind of how, and that's why a business and the government are a little different, in that regard. But
When we get to the big picture, at the end of the year, what is the contingency, $2 million?
yeah,
2,312,000 on page 9,
but it was,
bottom of page 9.
And then,
And I really think, Deanna's on that point here. I don't think there's anything we can do about it this year necessarily. But I think the city council, again, we need direction. The budget committee needs direction. And the budget writer needs direction on how big that contingency really should be. 2.3 million is.
so again,
a lot of money.
So again, remember though, it's not just 2.3 million. Right, it's broken up into funds, so in some of those areas, like the building fund, water fund, wastewater fund, right? So yes, it's across, it's like 2.3 million, but again, am I gonna use general fund contingency for the water fund? I mean, I wouldn't recommend that, council can do whatever they want, but I wouldn't recommend.
It's 10% best practices.
10%, it ranges, it's also really dependent upon the actual fund, what you need. So right now, we consistently say 10, what we probably need to do is go in a little more and say, like, the one area that would worry me the most about really low contingency would be any of the utility funds. Those would be the ones that would concern me the most, because if something actually does happen, large water break, something really major happens, then not being able to access funds to be able to fix it, without having to borrow from the general fund, that's the part that concerns me most.
so, but just taking this building fund, for example, we have a lot of money in there. And we can't use it for anything but what it's designated for. So why even have a contingency built in here? You can't do anything. What are you gonna do with that $41,000? There's nothing you can do. So we could spend that 41,000 somewhere else if we just gave a 1% contingency, because we know.
You would just, in this case though, to your point, since you really don't have a lot else that you would be spending it on, it would just go to your ending fund balance. That's where it would show, unless you were trying to spend something else with regards to the building fund. Again, this has to be specifically for the building fund.
Right,
Right.
that's what I was getting at, so it just seems like we've got so much money in there, and there's no emergent, there's nothing that's gonna come up. that
Correct.
needs-
And then, again, I think that's why we would look at long-term what the actual fees are, right? And say, okay, you're gonna wanna spend that, council instructions, we're gonna spend some of that down. We're gonna get to a certain level, then this is what fee structure we think would hit that level over a period of time. That's what that's what I would recommend, is you look at the overall fee on a go forward basis, but.
I don't have the number here, so I don't know, maybe Richard knows. you know, what the contingency that rolled over from last year.
I think it's the ending fund balance,
It's the ending fund balance, yeah, it's whatever we had in the ending fund balance.
So-
because it all drops down to.
Right.
All, it all drops down.
It all drops down to beginning fund balance,
Yeah,
and we always do this.
absolutely, always do, we always do.
Last year was its own case in that staff unilaterally increased contingency by 50%. So, I was apparently the only person who found that alarming, but, it's now been rolled back to 10, which probably is best practice. But certainly there are things where contingency could be much smaller, where you have negotiated contracts with employees, that type of thing. You're not gonna have, big overruns, I wouldn't think.
Typically, yeah.
Yeah, I would say staff has been responsive to the concern about large contingencies, and so they were rolled back this year.
And that's what our
You
initial,
brought it up, I don't think you're the only one who agreed.
Okay, Ms. Curtis a minute ago said that allegedly those facts were true, but those facts weren't true.
Oh, I was talking about your amendment to the minutes, that's
Right.
right.
I feel like it's really probably a discussion, like you're saying, for next year.
Yeah, and I-
Looking
I
at
do-
maybe a little more
I do believe as we
based
go
on
through here.
what's appropriate.
Right, I do believe that one of the things was, the first objective was to get it down from the 15 to the 10. That really was the first objective. I think now we really have to go through the funds almost individually and say, for the utility funds, there needs to be reserve set for, working capital, how many days. You don't have any money that are operating, that kind of thing. And then you figure out what that number is, and then that's kind of how, so it's more specific to the fund type than it is kind of a broad brush, which is what we do right now.
Well, it seems like we've already taken some steps, and I would agree with you that sounds like a good next step for next year.
Well, and I think that I agree with Gary. I really think that we need to be proactive instead of reactive on it, so. You guys aren't, don't have your feet to the fire a month or two before the budget, we're actually gonna be having these meetings. So I think it's important that the discussion is continued throughout the year, we're having some good discussions. And so the ball doesn't get dropped on that, and then we're doing hours long meetings trying to tear and hair out, trying to put information together. So we can actually make some good solid choices.
Anything else, or Steve?
Well, he has affordable housing too. That's next. I warned him that we were gonna high center right out. Okay, so in the affordable housing fund, again, we have talked before, this is a 1% construction excise tax, which was approved by the state. In 2017, I believe, 2016, the 2016 legislature, 2017 legislature. And that 1% is then broken up, and you can see on page 52. How it is broken down on where you can spend those funds that come in. Okay, now. What will still have to be voted on, right, was the affordable housing for Elk Creek. That would be a transfer from the general fund into this fund, so it would essentially take the. City program from 125 to 425 if you so approve. And what that would do is, that has more flexibility, because general fund, it wouldn't change the way it wouldn't like come into the general fund or into the affordable housing fund and then be 35%. Right, so what's that?
We've got 15% contingency.
That's a typo.
That was.
Yeah, it was typo, sorry, that's a typo.
Thank you.
Yeah. I haven't changed the entire document yet. Yeah, so it is 10, it is 10, I don't believe I adjusted it, again for 300,000.
So I have a comment, I'm not against the 300,000, but when I spoke of her, I'm very much in favor of transferring that or even more than affordable housing fund. But I think it comes with conditions. And I think that we need to be really careful on how and where we spend the money. If we do something in Love Creek Terrace, we do due diligence and really dig into what's there, who the ownership is, and then put some restrictions on, it can't ever go to market value type rental, whatever. I mean, I think it needs to be done properly, and I think we need to do a thorough job legally to make sure that whatever we do out there is well spent.
The only thing this was to be able to give the council the legal authority to be able to spend that money. Right, so that is it. So I believe like Councilor Hayes said last meeting, the minimum we want to see to start this conversation is CNA, right? So I think there's a lot, you're absolutely correct, Richard, in that there should be a lot of conditions that are attached to it, but also that needs to be decided at the council level on what the conditions they want to. So we would bring that back to them, and this money would never be released until the council came to an agreement what that agreement is.
Richard, the application that they made, however, to the grant committee has a lot of detail you just asked about, who owns it, who's in charge, all that. And I put a lot of work into it. Sharon's been able to visit with me. I'm pretty satisfied with, was this thing mismanaged for 30+ years? Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Not so much recently. But this is totally at the council's decision what they're gonna do.
Well, I'd be even in favor of putting more in. I really think affordable housing is an important thing. We had Seaside come and ask for $500,000 for a project that was going forward without us. And so I just think it's important that we have money in there.
And you still have, 320,000. The issue is it can only be used in certain ways. So the city program before the 300,000, council still has $125,000.
So the city council will make that decision. I trust them to spend the money wisely and put the right conditions on it. I just think that the more money we could have in there to try to encourage something, is a good idea.
Yeah,
I agree with Richard, I do, I'd like to see one that go there.
So does this go into the line item, 62640, the city program?
Yeah.
That's
the
additional 300 drop.
Yep, that's where, so it would move that from 125 to 425 currently.
And what's the difference in the line item above it too, the builder incentive program and the city program? What's the usage difference?
So city program is where we would do something like we're doing with Delta Creek, where we as the city would work with the affordable housing, or we would you could do vouchers, that kind of thing from there. The developer program is where you give incentives to the developer to put as part of their capital stack to make one of these projects actually viable.
That would be like the CMARC project.
Yeah, it just seemed like this.
So that would be the difference is in that particular case, there was a developer's incentive to do affordable housing.
So the builder incentive is only for projects that don't currently exist, and city program is for projects that currently exist and reinforce.
I would say that's somewhat fair. I mean, if someone was going to say add an addition or add additional units, if somehow they could do it in an existing facility. But it would have some type of development component of an existing, maybe a new or existing project.
Okay.
And this is only for affordable housing, not meta housing.
This one, well, at this point in time, I'd have to check the qualifications on that, but right now, what, my understanding is it's certainly affordable. Not say markets or things of that nature.
But you mean affordable by the government designation
That's
of
correct.
what it is, in other words, it's subsidized, you have to have a certain amount of income.
Right.
So it's a very strict
Yeah,
definition.
right, with CLARP, they provide documentation showing how they're meeting the median. Those specific levels that are provided by Clatsop County.
I I really like Richard's idea, because it seconded it. I think this council, this body could, show a good faith effort, could put a substantial, could say, we don't know what we're gonna spend it on yet, but here's $1 million into affordable housing. Because we see this is a problem of significant scale. It's not a small potatoes kind of thing.
We've heard lots of testimony, public comment. about
You would be answering a lot of
Where
people's.
is it, how's it happening and all that, they don't see, this would. This would absolutely show that you're serious about
And the
it.
fix that is required at the affordable housing we do have in town is quite expensive. It's
It's
substantial.
not gonna be small.
Yeah, and so that's
I
something
like
to keep in mind too.
workforce people here.
Just my one, because this is what I do. My one concern would be if I'm transferring more money and don't have a specific plan at this point in time, or use it to develop that specific plan. Is essentially, I'm just gonna bump up the ending fund balance inside of that fund. That would be my, and, that would be my only concern.
But-
So,
But that's a good point. I think that's a good place to put it.
You're moving the ending fund balance up there and down to the general.
What was the amount, Tim, that you found that they need, when you did that research up at Elk Creek, you had a couple numbers?
Gary's asked for the needs assessment, and they're gonna do that, and so, but my guess is it's a $3 to $4 million number to totally rehab that thing. Now, that's a complex question, because do you wanna own it when you're done? I've had really smart people come up to me and, have you looked at the idea of public trust? I really don't know how that works, please explain, I don't know what the end games could possibly be. And the city owning that isn't the best end game, in my opinion. But I could envision the city, and then just talking off the top of my head, the city spending $3-4 million or something to make that place really nice. And then sell it to an operating company that can take advantage of the tax reductions, because that's the one problem, that's the other problem with the city owning it. We can't take advantage of the tax benefits of affordable housing ownership.
Yeah.
So those are all things that the council's gonna worry about for like 2 years. What I really like about this idea is it's taking a substantial and meaningful percent.
Right, and $1 million in the context of that facility is chicken feed, so it's not like we don't have anything to spend it on, we
Well,
do.
and I don't think $1 million would be just for them.
Not necessarily, no, but I'm just saying, if we did have another project.
Yeah.
And we could spend it there, so it's not like we don't, that we're gonna have this $1 million sitting there, it's gonna be transferred to the ending fund balance. We definitely have things that can be spent on. So, I mean,
Have we ever spent any significant amount of money out of this fund? I don't think we have.
CBAR, only,
But how much?
it's like 100 and some.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but it was.
It's only one project, and this fund has only been around since, I think, 2017.
right, yes.
So. But if the developer's not lining up at our door to figure out how to utilize this fund. We're gonna have to be more proactive in how to create housing.
Is that a fund that if we put money in, it has to be used for that, like the building?
No, it has,
Or can we?
No, it would be-
Eventually move it out, with. If we need
You
it for
could.
something else.
I mean, it would keep the context in the general fund where it's more of a discretionary, this is just a place to hold it so you could spend it at that point in time. I probably would recommend that once it goes in, it stays in,
Yeah, okay,
but, just from an optics standpoint, I would
Yes.
sure make sure
Yeah,
that.
because you're gonna have Avery going on your door.
Yeah, no,
So, yeah, whatever that number is, but yeah, it would have,
we.
it would have flexibility.
With the other funds,
I
so.
think I would feel more comfortable with $500,000 than $1 million, but again, I think money is more we can put in there and have a plan, which we do now, have somewhat of a plan that maybe would work. But I feel more comfortable with that than the.
I'm familiar with Richard.
I mean, the interesting thing about Elk Creek, A, it's here, B, we can't let it fail. And, per, Jamie Lamont, the director of the project, had an estimate of these buildings kind of taking 6 to 8 weeks to do. I mean, I had in my mind 6 months. And so, you know, the initial ask, which council may decide to fund, would be a good proof of concept. Does this really work? Is this the right amount of money? Are we happy with the outcome? And then you make a decision, a more informed decision, what the rest of it could or shouldn't.
So we have a consensus that we'd like to put more money in this, and what was the amount?
The original amount was 3, you'd like to move that up to 5, is that what we
Yeah,
have?
I was hearing $1 million, but I don't know.
But that's what you shot. That's what you shot.
We all heard that, Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that we're just bumping it up symbolically. We don't have a project.
But it's,
necessarily.
I mean, it's like, we will then hold your feet to the fire.
It's, you know, we're sitting here arguing about contingencies, but yet we're dumping a bunch of money in. We have no idea where we can spend it. I don't have a problem with $500,000. That feels like it would at least solve the Elk Creek problem, or give us an option there and still leave us
Two
some
places
flexible
for
money, so.
Families.
I don't have a problem with the 500.
Okay,
Okay, so five.
okay, we'll wrap it up with, we get through to our discussion at the end. We'll just make sure, capture everything, and then that's what we're gonna approve with the changes. Okay, all right. Any other questions for the Affordable Housing Fund? Can I let Steve go? Good luck with that. All right, now it's just me. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. So the rest of these funds, really exciting funds. So we start with Tourism Fund, Arts Fund, that is page 43. Again, the major change here is that we, TAF has agreed that we can move 100,000 from this fund to the general fund to cover operations of public restrooms. So again, that is a tourism related activity, and we've received the okay from the lawyers to build it. So that's the major fund here. There are, the way we split this out typically is we have 523,000 for TAF awards. They usually spent around half of that, hopefully, they have a new kind of charter, so they'll expand that. And then the tourism purpose is just, that's essentially a line item, giving flexibility if we end up having something additional. Last year, they helped pay for the Midtown restaurants.
So Tim, can you explain, just go through that quickly again?
Sure.
So the 537 goes to the chamber?
No, 537, that 7 is for a tourism purpose, so if there's a tourism related project or additional grants that the TAF group would want to give, that is where we can take that. That's essentially all it is.
Is there anything out there now at this point for that?
Not to my knowledge, no, at this point in time, no. It's
And the
just a
520
place.
So the 523 goes to the chamber?
No, that's the next fund. That's the next year. I'll show you the next, when the chamber's gonna be the next one.
The 523,
523 goes to the grant building.
they have available for grants.
Grants, yeah.
And the 537, we kind of given them an expanded role so that they can, typically, they've granted primarily events, funded events. And we gave them a greater role to fund other projects that qualify with that state requirement that those are tourism related events.
And this,
So they have some money to work with, and But they're still working on what that's going to look like as far as what kind of application they accept on things.
There's one thing I've learned in my long years doing this, is if there are no specific projects that are laid out when you've got that money, it's really hard to spend money. It's really, really hard if you don't have specific.
I would like to see signs for the beginning and end of town put in this budget.
My understanding is that the TAF group is working on the sign project.
But can we line item it out so it's actually in the budget that this gets done in this next year?
I mean, I'm sure if you want me to break it out into, from one of these lines, I'd be happy
I
to.
think that's, isn't that in their,
I mean, that's for tourism purpose essentially, but yeah.
Isn't that the group's job to do that?
Yeah.
The TAF group. is-
And
that's
they
my
definitely
understanding.
are treating it as a priority.
yeah,
They've heard the complaints.
Okay, I would really like to see it
probably contact the chairman.
before the end of this budget cycle.
So the city council needs to make sure that we get it done. Yep, and we will.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Mhm.
I quoting the Second Street Plaza idea seems like tourism related. I know it's been around for only 17 years, but, would that need to originate with the council? Would it need to originate in this, with this committee? Again, you know, I'm just kind of thinking of things that we could do that would return value to our shareholders, our owners, in this town, and certainly doing something beautiful for Second Street Plaza.
I think we're looking for the Tourism and Arts Commission to make some recommendations of
They have to
what
start.
that looks like, on how projects are submitted to them.
That's my understanding is that their projects we proposed in like the Second Street Plaza, and then they would vet the project, whether or not that actually fits within everything, all the letters of the law. And then kind of come further down the line before it's proposed to council. That was my understanding for taxes, that they were gonna do a bunch of that legwork as a
That
secondary.
makes sense.
You might have talked about this while I was in
Soon
the,
to happen.
but, I still am wondering why part of the lifeguards can't be funded out of this fund.
Again, in theory, so when I got my original, what can I spend the money on? The lawyer said, public restrooms, yes, HVAC, yes, lifeguards, we're not sure. So again, I've been pushed back from the lawyers with regards to that. On the lifeguards, I think I need to take another run at it. You could, again. Do that, and it doesn't, but right now, essentially, it would come out of ending fund balance to be more one-time money. Or I guess you could lower the tourism purpose number. But again, from what the lawyer, this is that's the one area that the lawyers have pushed back on.
And this was the municipal attorney.
Yes, the municipal attorney.
Well, okay, but I'm just saying that is traditionally a very conservative position.
Mhm.
Yes.
And I don't, I would like to, you know, I.
This is the first year we're ever doing what we're doing now. With regards to just transferring in for HRAP and transferring in for public restrooms, city's never done it before.
There's also still a bill alive in the legislation.
June. is that-
Right, yeah, and I mean, it's the big one of changing the percentages is dead, but there's an amendment and they're still very active in it, so.
And I think if there's any hope on that, it's probably gonna be something related to public safety or affordable housing.
All we need is public safety.
Yeah,
All we
right,
need them to do is change it to public safety.
right now, you know, our city attorney is recognizing we follow the law the way it's written. I don't think she's gonna give us advice that, based on chance we're going to be sued on it.
We can put the number here.
And we have some more, I mean, we have some, yes,
Rescues, they're called.
I think generally too, we're gonna have to kind of look at these 4 TRT funds. kind of what they, well, one of them, we know what the use of the chamber. But you kind of like long-term, like what is happening to the 1.5%? What are we doing with the rest of the county, that kind of thing. So those kind of decisions, I think, are long-term, be able to, we're gonna get those funds.
We've got lifeguards pretty well funded right now, don't we?
What's that?
We've got lifeguards pretty well funded right now.
Inside the fund, they're, inside the general fund right now. But, so you're spending general fund dollars on it, which we're, and basically we're checking out with fire department. Yeah. But if you know, these funds are not as fungible, so if you could take these and put them towards that, your general fund. Pretty much you can spend wherever. Okay,
So, right, or legislature that we would like.
Yeah.
public safety, we're good with public safety.
It's kind of a no-brainer that we should be able to use it that way. It's also a no-brainer that the law doesn't allow it. If you read it.
Yeah, depends on how much you're willing to push the
Right,
envelope.
right.
Yeah.
So we're taking the first steps.
Yep.
Okay, page 45 is also called transient room tax fund. This is the one that passes through the chamber. So, and I believe, Eric asked last time, why are the numbers different? And what we do on this fund is we put in a revenue number in excess. And what that is really, if we end up getting more revenue, we're just passing, because we're basically, this is a pass-through fund or the chamber right now. And so if we did our projection and stuff, then I would have to come back to council. And actually, there's not a lot of room here, and figure out how to give them their additional funding. So this is just a safety measure. So that we, we don't spend it if we don't have it, because we, when it comes in, it just goes straight right back out to the chamber.
So I thought you were gonna cap the chamber number.
We are talking, we are having conversations, we have not had those conversations yet, and so that is put off until a later point in time, so at this point in time. It's what they could pass.
It's put out for when, do you know? When is it put out to?
The discussion, right now it was June 12th, I don't know where that meeting is,
That's
so.
changed because it was too close to.
It's July.
Oh, July has been changed to July,
So that's my understanding.
because it was too close to Sandcastle or something.
Any questions on that one? Okay, look at this cruising, 46, this is the transient room tax. Also the tourism facility renovation fund. This is the fund that was originally going to pay for or help pay for the CPP. As we know, that project is currently on hold. What we have done here is that we are essentially allocating the money to an unallocated project, and what that is, again, of course, we won't spend it until council decides what we want to do. We just wanted it to be available, or if council does make a decision that those funds will be available to spend. That's basically it right now. But this would also long-term be one of those funds where you look at. Is this someplace that would help, like if fund your police or something like that, if that kind of bill passes, so that's kind of an area that that's on. Okay, 48 is the plan. Oh, sorry.
Just a question on that, so that together with the bond fund that we have. That's what the council should think of as resources available as a starting point.
Yes, currently, yes, yes, you could do that. Yes, currently, if that was a tourism related facility. Then yes, you could combine these funds with the 3.5 million that we talked about a little bit. But if it's not a tourism related facility, then no.
And right now, that county fund. Recollection, so I don't, you will know off the top of your head, you probably do, or know what page it's on. but-
It's the next one.
Okay, and we're collecting like twice as much revenues as we've. Are required to cover the debt service, is that?
Yes, so actually, if we've moved to 49, which is the county TRT fund, which is where we currently pay for the debt out of the three that was what was originally issued there. So you'll see that the transfer to the debt service fund on page 49, 287,000. And then this is also where we are transferring funds, for the general fund for HRAP. Currently right here, it says 243.5. We are recommending adding another 50,000 to that, so it'd be 293.5, to pay for the additional 50,000 that the committee talked about adding to the HRAP. Or HRAP program. This one here too still has $1 million+ bucks in it. Last year we had a really high number because we had one of our hotels.
Yes.
Was not, had collected the tax but not paid the county the tax for like 3 or 4 years, so there was a big bump last year, that is not more. So last year's gets higher. Any other questions on that one?
That would be a question.
Okay, page 54, prepared food tax fund. This fund currently spends half of it goes to the fire department. Less 5% in this admin fee for us. And then the other part will go to help pay for the debt service for the city hall and police department. So you will see a transfer of $950,000 to the debt service fund, $950 to the fire district, and then $280 is for potential project costs if we have a capital project that we add to. So that's all that is.
Again, why have a contingency in this fund?
That's a good point.
I mean,
Well, one reason you would have contingency in this fund is that, if it comes in higher, I could do something similar that I do with the chamber for the TRT, but if it comes in higher, than what I've projected here, I can't get the money funds out necessarily to Kennedy Farm.
so are there any, like any fund balance estimated at $1,380,000? Are there any restrictions on it? And that Bruce could take it and build something with it, or do anything we want to the council to do?
Essentially, it was originally approved for the debt, for the city hall and police and the operations thereof or something. It's pretty broad language.
And infrastructure.
Yeah, and infrastructure. So yeah, it's pretty broad.
So, but we have the debt service built in here now.
Yes,
As expenditure, so,
correct.
so we're still generating extra money.
Yes, at this point in time.
Yeah, and again, I think this kind of goes back to my general comments. Is that the city council, you guys are just sitting on a ton of money. And you guys need to give us some, like, overall, as a city, you need to give the city some sense of direction. What are the priorities where this stuff goes? It's a big chunk of money. It's new, it's basically new money. But you have the option to do something with it. We just put it in any fund balance, or do we have some list of things that we want to do with it? I really think it boils down to the council giving us direction.
I have a question about the actual debt service payments. The debt service payments for these two projects.
Yeah.
There's a significant change once the projects are signed off and done, correct?
No, that is
Like for what we'll pay annually.
so right now, this year, we will pay, this fiscal year, the fiscal year we're currently in, we'll pay about $1 million in debt service. Because we didn't issue the bonds until October.
Okay.
On a go-forward basis, it's about 1.4 million.
Okay.
So, and then it's pretty consistent there. It's changes by a few $10,000 or something like that, but it's roughly 1.4 million for the remainder of the bond. So what we have now is we have 950 here, and then the additional, the general fund, sets the rest of the debt service fund.
Okay, and so the ending fund balance that is existing in there currently is the collections that happened prior to debt service
Correct.
payments, and then
Yeah.
going forward, that, and any fund will likely be building.
Probably not to the same, it definitely won't be at the same level. But, and what I would, recommend as we kind of go forward, as, you know, we're looking at. If those prepared food tax funds go on up, but my debt service stays the same, I would increase the prepared food portion of that debt and shrink the general fund portion. Is how I would do it. So yes, going to answer your question, going forward, it would, that should not grow at the same level.
So the 1.3 is essentially just money that's just sitting there, the ending fund balance is just floating there. Not expected to go up or down, just.
Not at this point in time.
That could get transferred to other infrastructure.
Yes, it could. And you know, this is one of the funds that is benefits from. The way we've changed the interest allocation now on a go forward basis, so that will go up.
By 800,000 a year.
Yeah, roughly, roughly.
Richard, your point about them, the city sitting on all this money. You know, remember, they've been, for the last 5 years, they've been working on 3 huge projects that they haven't had time to work on the other projects that have come up. Now, the station, the police station and the city hall are being built, so that's off the table. And I think that these other projects, I think, are gonna get to come up to the top or to the front burner, you know? So I think that's when a lot of the money has accrued because of, you know, the food tax and the TLT tax, well, that's different stuff, but anyway. I think that the last 5 years, projects have just taken all. And now they can, I think. It sounds to me like they're going to get rolling on the affordable housing and then, you know, other projects, things. So I think they will spend the money.
I'm sure it'll get spent, but I think the city council needs to have that discussion about where are our priorities?
And that's
Where are
what
our
I'm
priorities?
talking about, is they will. I think, you know, they've got on their calendars, lots of different things that, you know, people have asked them to start talking about. I mean, they don't need my defense, but that's what I see. I just see, you know, we do have this money now, and now these other things are behind us essentially, and except for the school, of course, and so that we can move on to these other ones that are gonna help our town.
I think the biggest thing is making sure that we actually designate those funds instead, you know, we can let things go, but I think we need to proactively designate those funds so we do have a plan moving forward.
What I would find helpful if Tim or Bruce could prepare it is, you know, we had that council meeting where I was tearing my hair out, where we were saying, you know, what could we buy for $5.5 million? And we weren't even agreeing on what the facts were in terms of what composed the $5 million plus. Did that include the 3.4, and then did it include the 1.9? I'd love to have staff prepare an estimate of, if you wanted to build a tourism related facility, here are the resources you have right now to do it. If you wanted to build a non-tourism related facility, here are the resources you have right now to do it.
I think though, yes, we could do that. I think though, to Richard, Deanna's, pretty much everybody's point, until kind of the council decides on what that priority structure is, I could say, yeah, we've got, I mean, right now, in theory, you could spend, you know, your general fund reserve, part of your general fund, ending fund balance, and that could be accessible, but that may not be what the council wants to deploy those funds for, maybe there's something. So I think if we had like if we did have a priority list, then we could figure out what the funding is, and then I could figure out what's the remainder. But right now, I don't really have that priority list. And so it's
But isn't
difficult.
it fair to say that kind of everyone seems to think a community center of some type is a priority? Maybe not.
I don't know, I mean, and I've been here for a year, just over a year, a week now.
You should have it all figured out.
And the last time we talked about, we had public comment with regards to the CDE. We had, I think, 8 people discuss what it should be, and there were 8 different answers. I think when I look at, like, just a few minutes ago, we were having a discussion about affordable housing, and the $1 million number was thrown out, and so. If we don't really have a set list or a set of priorities, it's really hard, I think, to say, because if we put a number out there, that's like, oh, there's another set of priorities. So I guess I'm,
Yeah.
I mean, I come up with a number,
For
right?
this first.
I think we just kind of need a priority list, and then once we can do that, I can figure out how to, where the funding would come from and for those various projects, et cetera, so.
I would think the community.
But I'll do whatever you guys want.
I would think the community center, or whatever we call it, school, is probably at the top of the list of constantly there.
I don't know.
I
can't answer that. I
We have to go through a process.
Durham Community Center is just so loaded. So community center means it's paid out of general fund.
Mixed use facility.
And again, if I don't have any, we don't have parameters.
That's what we had before, was a mixed use, and voters turned it down at $12.4 million. And so it's not gonna be cheaper. And so, yeah, we can,
And I think, again, I think it's just more of a, what are the big things that council really wants to do, and maybe that center is one. I can't speak for council.
Well, they'll tell us at some point.
Everybody will let me know, and then I will get out the 10-key.
and council has 5 different opinions too, so.
So there's, I think if we can narrow, narrow things down, then we can figure out, it's a lot harder to deploy those funds if we don't necessarily have a set of priorities or plans. That's just kind of the way it works.
Okay, next.
Okay, next, RV park. The RV park itself, no major changes in the current year. Continue the $300,000 transfer to the general fund, transfer to the RV park reserve fund. I think one thing I might recommend next year or two is we have operating funds, and then we have these reserve funds, which is what we spend capital on. I think I might recommend that we actually do them all in the same. Do it all in the same fund, but let's see what people think about that later.
I just had a separate line item for.
Yeah, you just would say all your capital, it would actually shrink the size of our budget. Well, I wanted to make it smaller page wise, but it would shrink the size of our budget because we transfer from one fund into another fund, then we spend out of that fund, even though that's just my commentary. Again, no major changes in the RV operating fund. The RV park renewal and replacement fund. Sorry.
I had a question to, I think it was Randy's point of what's the amount that we bump over to the reserve each year, is it just number and that's it, or is Escape Logics providing like, this is what we expect our capital expenses to be over this amount of time? Is there a calculation there? Is it?
Yes, actually, what Escape Lodging does is when they present their budget to us, they have a capital plan. Now, what has happened in the past, we really haven't spent money on the capital plan because there's been some questions with regards to what you're gonna do with the use with regards to the RV park. So what we've had for years, I think you can even see here, is like paved park grounds, that was roughly $400,000, right? So this year, we actually have $87,000 in actual projects that they're gonna do. And yeah, my recommendation in this case is that if you're gonna, you come to the crossroads, and you determine if we're, there's been talk about it as affordable housing, or there's been talk about it being, continue to be a RV park, right? So once you make that decision, once that decision is made, then either way, we're gonna have to spend money on master planning. If we decide to keep it as an RV park, we're gonna have to master plan that. Get additional spaces, how you're gonna do paving, et cetera. If you're gonna determine that it's going to be affordable housing in some way, shape, or form, there's gonna have to be a huge master plan with regards to that. So, these funds can technically be used for that, but on a go-forward basis, and that's why we've set up the, tours, is we wanted everybody to take a look at it, but this year, we're actually dedicated to those 3 projects. I think long-term, we should have funds in here to do both the master plan and to execute that master plan.
Okay, and the funds that are in here, it's an enterprise fund, but they're not legally tied up to a specific
No,
thing.
they're not. You can spend them however you wish. You could empty this fund every year if you wish. I wouldn't recommend it.
I was just thinking, going forward, if this facility were to change to some other use, these dollars aren't tied up.
No, so these dollars both at in the RV debt, this is where in the RV park operating fund and the reserve fund are eligible for whatever the council wishes to spend.
So my only comment here is that it's a valuable asset to the city, no matter what its long range purpose is. As long as we find it as an RV park, we ought to maintain it like a first class RV park.
Well, and that's,
And I know we're doing that, but I'm just saying, that's, it should, it's an asset that's very valuable to the city and it should be, continue to be maintained and kept on.
and Richard, we agree, and that is why we have definitely put the money in for these 3 projects. Should happen as soon as you approve the budget, I can find that.
Were these the 3 that were top of the list from?
Those were the 3 immediate. They really wanted, like I said, they wanna add, they wanna do the paving, they wanna add a couple of spots, that kind of thing, but you really, to do that, you really gotta do a full blown master plan.
Okay, well, when I went over there and talked with them, and I know Wi-Fi was one of the ones.
They took care of that this year.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, so they just actually have done that in the current year, they moved from Spectrum to Dish.
Oh, and that corrected the issues that they were.
That's my understanding.
Can I ask you a question, from this really clear, so on 62097, which is administrative services executive, that doesn't track with, on page 89, 49120. When the numbers don't match up, I'm just wondering which one is right. 49120.
Oh, I see. That's probably a human error on my fault. Those 2 should tie, and my guess is I did not, update one or the other,
Okay.
so. When you see the approved budget in June, it will. So if you look on page 89, up in, on 49120 from RV Park Fund.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Number then.
Yeah, it's 186, but it's 164 in the actual fund, and I'm guessing I got this one before.
Discussions recently with Tim and Bruce, we have 2 more years to run on the current lease. That's correct. And that's probably about the amount of time council would need to pick and to decide, oh, we want to spend $2 million making this a first class RV park, or we want to spend money on a priority that's more aligned with your citizens protection.
No, it'll take that kind of time.
So, but it's TikTok Let's not wait a year to figure at least the choice point.
And even at that, even if it takes a couple of years to get a decision, then how long is it gonna take to implement that and do they leave it in the lease? That's a discussion for another time.
Which path we take, and I know what you're saying.
Even if we took the path of putting affordable housing there, I think it's still gonna take the time to figure out how we're gonna get there. And then it's gonna take the 3 to 5 years to actually get it going.
Yes.
You know, you need to do master plans and engineering.
Yeah, so there's gonna be time, so leaving it in piece and not, that's for keeping the grounds pristine is, I think.
Well, there might not even be government subsidized housing.
Exactly.
Funded anymore, anyway.
I'm sorry.
Huh?
I didn't hear.
Oh, I said there may not be any federally funded subsidized housing at all.
And Counselor Kerr makes a very good.
Don't get me started.
I'll second.
We'll have coffee with that, and stuff.
Okay, any other questions? All right, next is debt service fund, page 83. This, you'll see this looks a little different than the prior year. Again, what was happening, was that we were paying some of the projected debt out of the individual funds. Again, best practice is that you pay for the debt service out of the debt service fund, so now we transfer the money to the debt service fund. And that's, I know what this is, base for the last bond for 2024 that we issued in October.
Much cleaner, thank you.
Okay, next one is the other one, I think we're gonna center. 84 is the tourism facility renovation fund. This is where the bond funds went for the CBE. So we currently have we got 3.4 million in there now. 115,000-ish in interest, depending on spend, et cetera. So what I've got it on code that says build renovation CBE, really just allocating that fund if the council decides to move forward with some type of project. There's no expectation that will actually be spent, but it would be, it would be available to the council. Now, one of the issues we're gonna run into here, clock is ticking, is that with regards to these funds, so when they were originally issued, the way debt works is when a municipality issues debt, the benefit of us is that debt is tax-free. What the IRS says is you have to spend those funds, reasonably believe you're gonna spend 85% of those funds within 3 years.
Whoa.
Okay, so we're kind of not past that. Now, you can always say, when we issued them, we did have a reasonable expectation that we're gonna spend 85% per year, right? And these are the things that happen. But at some point in time, we will have to spend these funds. Now, what these funds can be used for are other municipal, or they could be used, of course, for CBE, or they can be used for other municipal projects. They would just have to be paid for with a different source than they are currently paid for. But at some point in time, in the not too distant future, a decision with regards to what we're doing with the elementary school and these funds will have to be made.
What's that date?
Well, technically, we've already blown past the date. So when and really when it becomes an issue is, it could be a potential issue. And that if there's a plan, then we will be fine. If there is no plan, then we're gonna have to figure out a plan, really, guys.
So that decisive power is needed. How we're gonna control.
Correct. And either if the council were to say, we're not moving forward at all, then where would we apply these funds would be another decision I would be made. Anyways,
Did you say that we can use the money for whatever, if we don't use it for this?
Or it has to be
I
for
don't think
a,
that was very clear.
yeah, no, it has to be for a municipal, most probably infrastructure type project.
Now, I,
But wasn't
Think
that
about tourism.
guaranteed by TLT funds?
It's full faith and credit. So full faith and credit means that it's a full faith and credit of the city of Cannon Beach. So it could be general fund, it can be TRT funds, it could be whatever funds, yes. It could be RV park funds.
the, bond proceeds is what we're talking about.
That is what is correct. These are the bond proceeds.
Yes.
So the bond
That is
proceeds
correct.
could be used for a community center.
Could be, but you would have to find a different source, different funding source to pay for the debt. Yes, that is correct. Or it could be, 50% tourism, 50% community center, then, same thing, TRT is part of it. Yeah, but a decision will have to be made. At some point.
So I had said a decision.
Supposed to be paid back with TLT dollars.
They currently are, so there's, when we do bonds, basically, there's basically three kinds of debt.
Right.
There's general obligation debt, which is, property taxes, right, which is voted on by the people. There's full faith and credit, which is the full faith and credit of the city of Cannon Beach. So that can be with regards to, again, general fund, it could be an enterprise fund dollar or something like that. And the other one is revenue funds, revenue bonds, which that is typically when, like for a utility. Typically, you will issue revenue bonds, but full faith and credit also gives you a better credit rating, so the debt usually is cheaper if you do a full faith and credit. So,
I thought I heard you say that funds have to be paid back the same as what we said when we took the bonds.
again, it was full faith, you were full faith and credit, which just means what we said in the bond documents was that we were going to use TRT to pay it back. But what we're actually, what we have to pledge is all of our available revenue to pay it back.
Thank you.
Any other questions with regards to that? Okay, 85, City Hall and Police Station Construction Fund, really, again, this is just the appropriation for those projects. We will have, the police station will finish during this budget process. You will see this fund one more time next year, because we will still have 2 months left, 2 to 3 months left on the city hall project.
6 weeks.
6 weeks, stops. So that's, but again, this is just the appropriation, this isn't the actual project. Any other questions on that? Okay, the last set of funds is the admin services fund. And really what this does is allocates, central services across all of the operating funds. So the executive is, Bruce, council expenses, finance, of course, is my group. IT is, Superman Rusky. Central services is kind of something like insurance and central services. There's no major changes in these funds except for insurance is gonna be a little more expensive. I probably have heard it for 27 years, is that every insurance, every year it's a hard insurance market, but I think it's actually. But I think this year is pretty legitimate. They've already started telling us that they're gonna be big. And then lastly is admin, our PW admin. Fire away.
It looks like there's a substantial increase in admin, in expenses by department.
In which, in the whole
For
thing?
Executive, last year it was, the budget was 728, now it's 897.
Yeah.
So you went from 730 to 900. That's $170,000.
$170,000, we did add points, so one, you look at our legal services, we went up, budgeted on 100,000 points. You'll also notice that the $100,000 has been insufficient in prior years. We've added a 0.3 FTE in there with regards to the, core,
Communicate.
newsletter, community newsletter person. So that's two big areas where I would see, those areas going on. We spend a lot of money on these. Finance, same amount of people. Audit expenses are up 10 grand roughly. Then part of that is because we now have a single audit. Based on our, because of the loans, for water loans. IT, pretty much the, same with regards particularly to materials and services.
Yes, I have a quick question on the audit. You ever go out for bids for the auditors?
We haven't for a while, it's my understanding, typically we have the issue we find now, and it is best practice to do that. Every 5 or so years, I can't remember the last time we went out. One of the issues we find now are the limited number of CPA firms in Oregon that are actually doing audits. So Iceland company that we use is one of few. TKW out of Portland retired. Moss Adams, but Moss Adams would be roughly probably 2 to 3 times the total pay now. And so that's the difficulty that we have right now.
It's worse than the insurance market right now. Audit fees are doubling, tripling quite quickly. And we just don't, best not to poke the tiger, probably.
Yeah, so, right now, I think, we get really pretty good, we get pretty good service from them. I think, Paul, the senior partner, is gonna retire, is actually retiring here in the next couple of years, so they're gonna change over partners. So that may also be a good time for us to go off and see what happens. But again, I am kind of worried about, because it's one of the things that we absolutely have to do. And so I'm a little worried that we use stuff like that. Like I said, insurance is up in the, what I have there, it's 45,000, so. That may be a little conservative, turn. And then lastly is, Public Works Administration. And, there's no major changes there. And with that, that is all the fun.
I have a couple of questions.
Fire away.
Page 18, building maintenance. We had talked about, Boulevard and, the school. Do we need to be thinking about putting something in there? Roads, building.
So, my recommendation on the school is, and I think this is, kind of similar to the Elk Creek, not as kind of broad, but I think the council will have to make a decision with regards to what we want to do with that facility and lease. And in that case, once that decision is made, and I'm guessing that we will end up investing in that building, then I would ask the council really to move the money for the roof or whatever out of contingencies. Is what I would ask.
So we want to do that.
Yeah, that's what. General contingencies. General contingencies, that's what I would ask.
So,
But again, I think the council has to just determine what we're gonna do with that lease, because the lease language, again, I don't know why any of this happened. The lease language is really, they pay a minimal amount of rent, but they're responsible for the essentially for the structure. And I don't know how to assess that, particularly since it's the asset, I just don't know, but I think we have that discussion about it.
And I can give you the history of it,
so
not at this time. So long, after.
So then on the other building, with regards to the other building, I don't necessarily have any additional funding in here for that. But I think there is plenty of funding if we wanted to do something to analyze the whole long river, I think.
So whose department does that fall in? Is that Bruce or Karen or who makes the decision to recommend maintenance like that? You know, basically maintenance. Huh?
It's not the finance guy. But other than that.
So, but those are things you're gonna evaluate and make recommendations about. So, but what's the 488 on that page for the food bank building and canopy? What are those?
Those are carryovers from what we were doing last year when we had the plan. With regards to the elementary school, what we were gonna do with the food bank, so where the current food bank is. We were going to buy one of the modulars we have currently and place that, so that money is still there, because I'm assuming at some point now we're gonna have to do something with the food bank. So that's why that's there right now.
So is the plan, and is there a plan to actually do those two things?
I do not know at this point, this is the carryover plan from the current year, I do not know what to go forward with this.
We will,
But I have no
we
idea.
need to do something to replace the existing food bank. We did lose the opportunity to buy that one unit. And, as Tim said, I think the funding is. So, we've not gotten this far as, if we potentially buy one of these units, it was still gonna be expensive. Or go out and buy something else for bills.
But you can put plan to make some.
Yes.
So, okay, thank you.
And then will the food bank then be a city-owned building?
Yes, as it is now.
It is a city
currently now.
Yeah, it's current.
Yes.
And the other, under,
And no meat.
under parks.
Could you give us page numbers, Richard?
Yeah, which page, Richard, for parks?
30.
30. Okay.
And we talked about doing something with the tennis courts. I think there might be, I think that was all we had, it was tennis courts, renovation. I don't know what the number is, but we got pictures and we looked at, you know, what that looks like. I think it would be wise that we set aside some money to do the refurbishing of the tennis courts.
We should agree. In doing the next fiscal year.
Those-
During the next fiscal year, agree.
So should we put something in the budget?
Yes, for sure.
I guess, yeah, so what would the recommendation be?
Well, I think we spent around 25 to 30,000 10 years ago, 12 years ago. So I don't know, maybe 35.
At least.
We can get it.
Because inflation's only like 1%.
What did you say, Tim?
I said inflation's only been like 1%, so 35 should do it.
Maybe 50, maybe probably.
So but anyway, if we don't spend, we don't spend. So
We get a price. We get it.
if we put 50,000 in there, would that be adequate? That makes sense.
I just, you know, I took a look at those pictures. I appreciate Randy Neal putting that package together. You know, just like what are the things that we want to spend our time on? Do we want to spend our time in deposition saying, yeah, we know it's a problem, but when we tripped and fell there, decided not to fix it. I mean, we just gotta fix that stuff.
Yeah.
Agree. We need it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, fix it this fall. Possibly.
Yeah.
So is 50,000 adequate for everybody online? I don't know the number.
We can get it now.
What's that?
We can get it numbers.
Well, whatever. We should probably do something, and then we can always come back and take it out. and do
So,
this.
Let's put 50 in and
Yeah.
Okay.
then
Gotcha.
we would go.
And you've got,
So then that would be 50,000 here and that would lower Indian fund by 50. It's the offset.
how many contingency funds?
No, it's in general fund, general fund.
Like, well, some parts, I would really like an additional $1,800 for flower baskets and beautification.
Flower baskets and beautification.
Yes, so we've got 1,800 in there, and I would really like to see that double, and that way, if we can find some places that we can have some more flower baskets, then we could have them.
So what I would, for $1,800, what I would recommend is that we just, you guys decide that we should have more flower baskets. And we just.
But
more
we,
flower baskets.
we need to remember that it's not just, I mean, there's expenses involved with maintaining all of them.
Right, but if they're out with the water truck anyway, as long as they can hit the water truck, it's a couple extra minutes on the route.
I guess seems to me we have so many flower baskets. I mean, I love them, but I just, seems to me that people always are saying how beautiful our downtown is because of the flower baskets. So I'm not saying we're the flower basket deficit.
Where's the extra ones go?
Yeah.
Well, it can, see, if it was put in the budget, and then it could just be spent, which there are things that would need to be done, we would need to put in new. I'm not gonna argue this point, a lot of the businesses pay for the flower baskets. Too, so
Well, that's what they pay for their own.
we do,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
but these are the ones for town, and I just. I don't know, I just kind of feel like I think we could,
Or do you want the city to pay for the business's flower baskets? Okay, so I'm just what you're saying.
It seems like,
You're already suggesting we just
I'm just saying,
overspend the budget and.
yeah,
If
if
we
we
do
did
these,
18 and $167,000 budget, I can probably find 1,800.
If we do find ways for additional
If we
baskets.
would like to get some baskets.
let's do
I'm
that.
just saying, I'm just saying,
Is that a public works?
that's public works, we're trying. You just want.
We'll let them.
Excellent. So yes, that's what I would recommend for the 1,800.
So the next question I had was, we talked about putting some money, Karen talked about putting some more money in for a beaver project. On the,
What page?
CFR. Yeah,
yeah,
it's 28, 29. So currently in the budget is 18,000 total, 8,000 of that is for the EHCFR master plan. And 10,000 is for beaver restoration.
that she talked about doubling that beaver actually.
Budget committee can make a recommendation.
I would like to see that too.
Okay.
That's a great idea.
So 20, so that line item will now be 28,000, what we're looking at.
so we're
Everybody-
at 10.
Anybody got $10,000 on 62,560?
And that comes out of the,
Essentially, that would come out of Indy fund.
admin fund.
Yeah, the Indy fund, general fund, Indy fund would lower by 10 grand. Okay.
That's fine.
And then my last question was on the Coal Creek Forest Reserve Fund. We had talked about doing page 41. We had talked about putting some money aside. And I just think that we've neglected the Forest Reserve. We've had it for 12 years. We essentially have not spent any money in there. We haven't done very much in the master plan whatsoever. There's nobody really championing the Forest Reserve right now. We used to have a mayor, a city manager, and a planning director who that was their baby. And so we just haven't had anybody really champion the issue. I'd like to see.
I disagree with that. With
What's
the
that?
Parks and Community Services, we spend a lot of time with they're the champions
But
of that.
they're not, they're advocating to keep people out of it. They want to keep people out of the reserve. I don't agree with that, and I don't think the citizens should agree with that. That you keep people out of the reserve. We bought that as a city asset to, if you look at the questionnaire, we did a city questionnaire.
Yeah.
The top of the list was tree preservation, recreation of residents. Fish
Passive
preservation.
recreation, yes, I remember
Yeah.
that.
And I just think that we need to be putting aside money to implement the master plan. They haven't changed the master plan.
To do what? I remember one counselor years ago said he didn't want dogs up there.
Well, and the other thing that we were gonna do, and we haven't done,
Dog in the
was
forest.
we were gonna buy the property in the budget. maybe five, I don't know if it was in the budget, but 5 years ago, we had negotiations going on to buy the headwaters, the area above the springs. We haven't done that. And so there's things to be done in the forest reserve that we need to start setting money aside.
See, if it was to buy that property, I'm all for it, but if you wanna, I'm not sure what you wanna do in there, I mean, I
Well,
think.
I don't know what I wanna do either. I just think that we need to start spending, setting aside money and spending money. We have a ton of money now. We didn't used to have money. We had to fight for $50,000 to resurface the roads. Now we're sitting on a pile of money. We have a valuable asset up there. And I think we need to start thinking about how we're gonna spend money and start setting some money aside in this reserve fund. Which is that what it was designed for. It was basically designed to hold money from logging and pay expenses in the forest reserve. And so I just like to see us put some money aside for whatever we do up there. You know, I think
Including buying additional property. Including buying additional property, is that one of your
Yeah,
ideas?
whatever, right? I mean, there were negotiations. I don't know what happened with them. We had negotiations. We had Mike Morgan was representing the timber company that owned that land, and they had logged it, and we were gonna be able to buy it at, you know, a decent price. And, I don't know what happened. It disappeared. I don't know what happened to the negotiations. But I don't think any of us in here were involved in those.
Right,
But it's, if, you know, if we wanna preserve our tap water, our drinking water source. It comes from above the springs, and we don't own that property.
So how much would you suggest?
I think $100,000 to put in the reserve. And, maybe more, but I think 100 is a good number to start with. That's
And
my,
So this reserve fund was set up in 2013, essentially to capture money from timber sales. Supposed to be re-upped every 10 years, was not re-upped in 2023. So this fund has not been re-upped. So I'm not sure I would necessarily use this fund if you were going to spend money on it. I would use it, I would allocate it inside the COLA Creek reserve, the regular, or spend the expenditure.
So just add a line item of
Yeah,
capital.
if you wanted, to, yeah, you could add capital, you could add, you know, or whatever, because again, it's basically a general fund. This is a reserve fund. I wouldn't like I said, I'm gonna try to combine most of the reserve funds into their original fund, so that it'll have, it should be more transparent. But that would be my recommendation for.
maybe we should make a recommendation to end this fund. Put it in the Eagle Creek regular fund and add $100,000.
Well, I think the council has to,
We have to pass a resolution to dissolve that fund, right?
Yeah, the council got
I can try.
it.
we have a master plan. Seems like we need to really look at that master plan.
The stewardship plan was renewed in 2022.
I mean, we've got some concerns with camping and fires that are caused by camping. We've got some concerns about recreational, sewage, issues. I'm not sure what we would do, but it seems like we need to be not creating, a problem.
By increasing the use.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
Well, I
I'll-
think if-
The other
Well, I think if you have more use, then you're gonna put an end to people camping up there. If you actually have people camping, and there are people using the trails and using the forest preserve, you're gonna not have people camping. There's somebody that reported and put it out there.
it doesn't
There's
work
lots
like
of
that.
off-trail places like that.
Another option is the council could review the stewardship plan. And if at some point and decide at that point in time, they'd like to allocate it and give people it up to see if it's do at that point in time, or you could do a line item now.
It probably should start with the Parks Committee.
So. I'll start.
Yeah, let's get them to review it.
That'd be great.
And they have that on their, I think it's next month, they're gonna go start working on it again. So,
I have another, are we still talking about discussion points, no, not in full points. This one, so the shuttle.
Thank you.
that-
Before you do that,
Yeah.
excuse me, Aaron. Did we have a consensus on anything on the money?
I thought we had.
I recommend 100,000.
Well, I'm not, I agree with that. I think the parks should review the stewardship plan, and then if they come up with a plan, then they come to the council and get that.
Well, they have,
I agree with that.
they have a master plan that says they're gonna do a bunch of things. They just don't do them. That's the
I think the
problem.
parks actually works pretty hard. Yeah, you know, I think they've done quite.
Well,
a bit.
he's not saying that they're not working hard, he's saying that there's a master plan that no action's been taken on. it.
Well,
Yeah, that's what I mentioned.
Let them, they're, okay.
But there has been action taken on some of them, not all of them.
But what is the harm in moving on? We've got the money right now. What is the harm in moving the money there? And if we don't use it, we can either leave it in the fund or we can move it out.
I think
That's
that
the next
it's more transparent when you move the money because you have a plan. Rather than just, we're gonna put some money here because we hope. You know, it's, I mean,
In some ways, though, it's signaling.
So there is a
the
master.
Public and others that you're taking this seriously. I mean,
well,
I
that's.
think the whole thing about
But then they.
affordable housing, you know, putting money up front is a strong signal.
Except that this is the parks.
But we're not just getting on the process that should be done, I don't think, my opinion.
But they may not be thinking outside the box. They're
It's
thinking
not
the box.
possible.
If they just say,
Yeah.
maybe if they're told, get yourself this plan, so that next year we're gonna, you know, we plan to put another 100,000 in there.
But they have a master plan. And so they could use the money if they.
But we don't know, but we've gotta know that they're going
We
to,
need to know what it's for.
just because they have it. Doesn't really say they're, you know. Going to do it.
Yeah, it seems like we're usurping and.
They, you know, they've gotta have the,
By giving them money, we're.
no, people.
They're real.
They have to make
For
a
the,
decision
you know.
how they want to spend it, and then they can say, we have this great project, we'd like the council to fund it, and council says.
And then they have to wait, until the next budget cycle or whatever, when we.
No, they don't.
No, they can do it.
No,
Right, there's this contingency.
You have to wait this far.
Council can.
It's not even, no, they can have access to that.
But if we show them, I think Tim has said that, if we show them in good faith that you have this money and you have these, I don't know.
Well, it seems backwards to me. You know,
I think my point is, I think it's a valuable asset that the city of Cannon Beach purchased with a vote by the people of Cannon Beach.
By
And we bonded it. We got, I think $1.3 million back from Oregon Water Enhancement Board to help pay for the financing. And it's essentially, it's sat there. We have not done anything with it. We have one trail that we've improved slightly. There was an old logging road. It's still wet and soggy and needs to be drained. And that's all we've done up there. That's all we've done is improve the 40%. And now it's.
First issue to get over is to get enough people that want people up there.
right,
There's a lot of people that don't want people up there.
Well, it's a city asset.
I know, but they're in charge. They're the commission. They're the ones.
It seems like, I mean,
I always thought.
Well, if you look at the master plan, we filed a master plan with the state of Oregon that was required to be filed. Because it was state land, and it was a complicated land swap.
I understand that.
And that calls for bridges, pedestrian bridges, a trail system. It calls for those things, and that's never been changed.
That.
Those haven't been changed.
But there's all sorts of things that have changed. We never talked at all about fire danger. When we developed, or the first stewardship, we never used the word fire, never used the F word during that whole time. Things have changed.
But it's closed in the summer because the state forest department closes it. When there's a high fire danger, they close it for any public access
Right.
completely. So that's, I would say the danger, it is no different than any state park or any other place that's a public, has public access. You know, they close it, so there's no access. There's a sign up on the
Right,
gate.
I know that.
But some people like it the way it is now. I go up there all the time. I love it. I love Long Island Trail. I mean, I can understand what you want to do with it.
I'd like to have some hiking trails. I'd like to have a bridge over the.
I've hiked all through it. Actually, I've hiked all through it.
So I really think the direction is that, and we've already gone to the Parks Committee, you know, and discuss, I thought you guys had a great discussion this last meeting. We need to continue, those discussions need to happen at that level.
Well, that's fine. I can only express my opinion. I'm one of 9, so.
Just not,
I have all the trails I want to.
Yeah, exactly. There's all sorts of trail opportunities that aren't in the reserve.
without regard to any specific proposal or idea. I think it's fair to say the budget committee can provide leadership to sort of say, we identified a priority here and we can very, tangibly demonstrate that by throwing money at something. And that is its own form of leadership. And I think that's quite legitimate. Whether it's this project or any other project, and I'm happy to see the budget committee acting with that type of leadership in general.
I think it's legitimate too, but I think there are bigger concerns here, and I would like to see Parks take a look at the whole thing and say, does this make sense or does it not make sense?
But
If they
the money
can recommend
can't be
trails,
spent unless they do that, and then you decide that what they propose is right.
And then
So-
take it out of contingency.
Yes, easily.
You take it in an open meeting.
Mhm.
You
Right.
move.
With public comment and everyone's, contributing their opinion and how you want, I mean. And I don't think the budget committee is where you make policy decisions. I think on that level, I really don't. I think our job is to, identify needs and then
Yeah,
that we've already been established, that are obvious.
yeah, I
And
think
fun.
it's weird, the process is for the committee to ask and put in their budget that they would like to do this. When they're ready to do something, we don't know if they're ready to do anything. We don't know if they've got enough people, enough consensus, we don't know. And, we're willing to give them the money, but I think we need to know what we're giving the money for, not just, here's 100,000, do something.
Well, but do they, I
mean-
think the big thing, is, I agree with what Tim said. I never thought I'd say that.
Been taking a year to say that.
it's 3 o'clock.
There'll be a movie.
So what I've heard so far, outside of this one, is that we're gonna increase $10,000 for the beaver restoration, $50,000 for the tennis refurbishment, correct? And we have talked briefly, but moving the transfer to the affordable housing fund to 500,000, and I'm just, before everybody else starts going, I just wanna make sure I'm kind of. Is that right?
That sounds like.
Okay, all right, okay. Any other, I know Eric, you had a question.
Go ahead,
I wasn't sure if you were going back about that stuff.
please.
So the comment I had was about the shuttle subsidy that's provided on the, community programs, page 19. 66,000, Randy brought up this, we just essentially put that money there every year, and it just kind of sits there. This, the program that was identified as TSP as doing something with the shuttle. Do we need to allocate 66,000 for doing something, for figuring out what that is, or is this just a placeholder to what money is not gonna get spent.
So it's my hope
Again.
that the new director of the transportation district,
Mhm.
is interested in looking at some of those kinds of things, and I think it should stay there so that they know we're still very much interested in the shuttle service, but right now,
Is 66, it sounded like 66 wasn't nearly enough to do anything
Well,
in the past.
I mean, I think what we're hoping is that they provide what that 66 is just a contribution to the service. And what they have said is the issue is not being able to find staff.
Status, yes.
Staff is the issue.
Yeah.
They've just appointed a new director and, I think we should keep it in there with hopes that we can get a shuttle service.
I don't mean to advocate for getting rid of it, I want to see us have. a shuttle.
Okay.
I just wanted to.
Maybe
make
the
sure
amount of
that
money.
this is
Oh, yeah.
the appropriate amount of money, does it need to be retitled to not be subsidy? Something. In order to actually make use of this as it was called in our TSP, I think it's something that's super important and can be a major asset to the community. It was poorly utilized in the past, I think it was poorly advertised, there's some stuff that wasn't appropriately run with it that didn't make it as good as it could have been.
Right.
But I think it's something that we need money in there for, and it's also being advertised currently in Portland is that we have it.
Well, hopefully the new director will make sure it happens. I mean, that's all, we can, at this point, that's all we hope for. It's been a mess.
At least that's the easiest solution to us getting there.
It's just getting the drivers. And getting,
Okay, so.
And we just-
it's something-
I have no, yeah, I mean, I think that's
Okay.
a safe amount.
Seems appropriate.
Did we tie up the loose end on the public art? Thing that was part of your,
I don't think anybody made a decision on it.
say that again?
I don't think anybody made a decision on it.
Okay, I thought that was, do we need to revisit that?
I would like to see it.
I would like to see it too. I think it's great.
We can take it on.
I don't have a problem with the public art, but I think we've spent a lot of money on, the city hall, and I think that it should be in a place that is for everyone to.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah,
Wasn't that in the budget? Or was that?
There's 50 grants.
Yeah.
Public art project in there.
And it wasn't necessarily in City Hall. I'm assuming.
a suggestion, I think we're looking for an outdoor location, but it's not tied to that.
So I don't know what the issue is.
I was not sure that it was a second issue. That. Any more work had to be done on it, or whether that's baked in the cake already. If it's baked in the cake already, great.
Isn't it, it's in the budget?
We have 50 grants in there.
I think that Georgia was, it's more of a plan.
What's that? It's on page 19.
And is that,
Yeah.
Things like that.
should we talk about moving that to TAC or no, or is that what it is?
No, it's on the community center, the 50 grants in the community program.
Okay,
Town
that's where
could
it is.
do additional. Public art if they wish to,
And they're very
charged.
interested.
Yeah, I think
Public
that's,
art.
Mhm.
and your recommendation on. Cannon Beach Academy, the Tolavana building would be the council just review the lease and. And if we take responsibility for the maintenance, we'll find that somewhere.
Yeah, I think if we as staff go back, review the lease. And me make a recommendation, and then yes, then I would. The way I'm guessing that is playing out, gonna play out is it's our. It's our asset, so we should figure out how to take care of it. But the way the lease is written, we just have to do a little travel.
I think so too. I don't know. I'm assuming they're asking because it's a priority.
Yes, that would be my understanding also,
So I would like to make
should
sure that that's something we take action on.
Yes.
So do we,
So for an agenda item. Jen? Agenda item. Close your solitary.
again, my recommendation would be we bring the lease back and we say yes. Wait, if it plays out, we say yes, and then we just pull 58 grand out. Yeah,
That's in July, we already have it scheduled and scheduled.
Oh, good job.
So July work session, have the academy lease and also was it Elk Creek?
better get that done,
Yeah,
What's the other one?
Elk Creek,
Oh, okay, thank you.
yeah, so he had Elk Creek Affordable Housing and CD Academy lease.
Good, thank you.
Any other changes, additions? Can you bring the spreadsheet up? See it here real quick, I want to make sure we got everything.
Really want you to become more involved.
We are gonna get you flowers, I swear.
No.
I'm gonna go.
Be quiet here.
Not saying, it's not gonna be. So again, we just recap real quick. Everybody's in agreement on 500,000 goes to the affordable housing fund. 50,000 for in parks for tennis refurbishment, 10,000 additional dollars. For the beaver restoration, so bring that up to 20,000. And then we also moved up community grants from 140 to 175. We added $50,000 to HRAP and increased the county TRT transfer by 50. So again, that's about 35,000 in, there we go, about $35,000 in actual salaries. And you go down, I think that covers it. County TRT, yeah. So the bottom where it says 300,000, that will be a $500,000 transfer, so it'll take city program up to 625. Does that sound right? Is that good? Okay,
Any other questions, Richie? Okay,
all right.
now do you,
So everybody has a copy of the, essentially the budget, committee action. Which, approves the budget as we have it ended here, so I will make those amendments, so when the council sees the approved budget, it gets posted on the website, it'll have all these changes in it. And it's also approves the, permanent rate, living permanent rate of 70.7049 cents per thousand assessed value for the general fund. You're gonna levy 167,000 for county debt and levy 0.2590 per thousand of assessed value for the Cannon Beach Road. So those are what the actual budget committee action does. And there is a motion at the bottom of the page on the front, and as it says, thank you so much for all of your work.
So I will move to approve the budget committee action, which gives final approval of the city of Cannon Beach fiscal year 25-26 proposed budget document, including the agreements agreed by the Cannon Beach Budget Committee.
I second.
Make a suggestion? We change the date of the action to the 22nd.
Oh.
The very bottom.
Oh, on the final document, or document design,
It says the 22nd.
approve as budget committee on this the 15th day.
Oh, yeah, I was really hopeful
Yeah.
last week. I thought I could will it into existence.
So some of them are different.
I have one that says the 22nd.
Second, okay, I updated, I changed it.
Yeah, I think I printed it out here. Do we want to change it to the 29th?
No, no. No. You want me to hold it for me?
So maybe my motion should read, I move to approve the budget committee action dated 22 May.
Second.
Kind of.
You see. Meetings and everything.
I have no idea. I think we usually do all in favor, don't we?
Sounds right.
I'm sorry.
All in favor.
Oh, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now. Do I have yours, please?
What's that?
I read this.
I know
whereas.
technically you don't have to because with the motion was to approve
This.
this.
Oh, great, okay.
Good job.
Because I don't know. Okay, great, so then. That was nice, thank you. Good order? It's not on here, but.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you to everyone involved in the budget process this year. Good job.
Thank you all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Budget committee members, and I have one for Tim as well, you'll find a copy of, Ezra Klein's Abundance, which was influential to me when I was reading it a couple of months ago. We'll all be more like the next.
In our spirit time.
Anything else for the computer? Thank you for the board. We're adjourned.
All right.